Started on a quiet Sunday morning, coffee in hand, when I found the voicemail. My sister Karen had called late the night before, slurring her words. I hesitated before pressing play. Karen was known for her dramatics, but this time her message chilled me to the core. You think you're so perfect, don't you, Rob? Your wife? She's no saint. I saw her with another man. Thought you should know. I froze. Karen had a way of twisting the truth to serve her own narcissistic delusions. She thrived on chaos and often inserted herself where she wasn't wanted. Yet something about her tone stuck with me. Candy, my wife, had always been my rock. Beautiful, warm, intelligent. We'd been together 10 years, and though no marriage is perfect, I thought ours was solid. But Karen's words planted a seed of doubt I couldn't ignore. That afternoon, I casually asked Candy about her week. She seemed distracted, scrolling on her phone. Oh, the usual, she said. Work's been crazy. Her answer felt rehearsed. That night, lying in bed beside her, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I decided to investigate, not because I believe Karen, but because I couldn't let it gnaw at me. The next day, I called Marvin, a private investigator recommended by a friend. He was discreet and assured me he'd have answers within the week. Meanwhile, I played the dutiful husband, suppressing my anxiety. Marvin's call came sooner than I expected. Rob, I think you should see this in person. We met at a diner on the outskirts of town. He handed me an envelope. Inside were photographs of Candy and my best friend Mike holding hands at a cafe. Another showed them embracing in the parking lot. And then, the most damning, her entering a hotel room with him. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Mike? The guy who stood by me at my wedding? The man who shared beers and laughs with me on countless weekends? My sister was right, for once. When I confronted Candy that night, she denied it at first, but the evidence was irrefutable. Tears streamed down her face as she confessed. I never meant to hurt you, she sobbed. It was a mistake. A mistake? I spat. This wasn't a one-time thing, Candy. It was calculated. Deceitful. Her tears turned defensive. You've been so distant, Rob. Always working, never here. It was a weak excuse, and she knew it. But the worst was yet to come. Days later, Karen showed up uninvited, smug, and self-satisfied. I told you, she said, feigning concern. You should have listened to me. Get out, Karen, I snapped. But she didn't budge. She's not the only one, you know, she said, leaning closer. Mike's been bragging about it for months. Said you'd never find out. You were too busy being Mr. Perfect. Her words cut deep, not because I believed her, but because I knew she reveled in my pain. Karen had always been the center of attention, manipulating our parents, stirring trouble between me and my friends. And now, she'd finally gotten what she wanted. A chance to prove I wasn't better than her. In the weeks that followed, I had to confront the wreckage of my life. Candy begged for forgiveness. But trust once broken is hard to mend. Mike tried to reach out, but I blocked him on every platform. The final straw came when Karen spread the story throughout our family. Poor Rob, she said at Thanksgiving, always so blind to the people around him. It was then I realized that Karen wasn't just a narcissist, she was dangerous. Her delight in my suffering was more painful than Candy's betrayal. My family had always brushed off her behavior as harmless, but now they saw the cracks in her facade. They apologized, tried to make amends, but it was too late. I filed for divorce, cut ties with Mike, and went no contact with Karen. The pain lingers, but I'm learning to rebuild. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Betrayal often comes from the people closest to us. And sometimes, the only way to heal is to let them go. Weeks after I filed for divorce, I learned Candy wasn't taking the separation well. She refused to leave our home, claiming she needed time to process. That was rich, coming from someone who'd been sneaking off to hotel rooms with my best friend. Meanwhile, Mike, ever the coward, had gone radio silent. The tipping point came one afternoon when I returned from work to find Mike's car parked in my driveway. My blood boiled as I walked into my house, only to hear their voices in the living room. Candy was laughing. I stormed in, and there they were. Mike sitting on my couch, Candy leaning toward him as if nothing had happened. They froze when they saw me. "What the hell are you doing here, Mike?" I growled. Candy jumped up. "Rob, calm down. Don't you dare tell me to calm down," I snapped. "You lost the right to talk to me the moment you crawled into bed with this piece of garbage." Mike stood, his hands raised as if to defuse the situation. "Rob, let's talk this out." I didn't let him finish. My fist connected with his jaw before I even realized what I was doing. He stumbled back, knocking over a lamp as he went down. "You had one job, Mike," I roared. "To be my friend, and you blew it." He scrambled to his feet, holding his jaw. "You think I wanted this? You were never there for her, man. You left her lonely." I lunged for him, but Candy stepped between us. "Stop it," she screamed. "You're acting crazy." "Crazy?" I shouted. "Crazy is bringing him into my house, onto my couch, after everything you've done." Mike, ever the coward, used the distraction to slip past me and out the door. I heard his car start up and screech away, but I wasn't done. Candy had the nerve to look offended, as if I was the one who had wronged her. "Do you even feel guilty?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger. "Or is this just some game to you?" She folded her arms. "I've said I'm sorry, Rob. What more do you want from me?" "I want my dignity back," I shouted. "But since you and Mike trashed that, I'll settle for getting you out of my life." The next day, I contacted my lawyer and told her to escalate the divorce proceedings. I didn't care what it cost. I wanted Candy out of my house. But the injustice didn't stop there. Mike had apparently told our mutual friends his version of events, painting me as an abusive, neglectful husband. That's when Karen saw her opportunity. She posted a smug little video on social media, smirking as she said, "Some people get what they deserve, don't they, Rob?" She didn't name me, but everyone knew. I'd had enough. I wasn't just going to let these people destroy my life. First, I confronted Karen. I marched into her office at the boutique she owned and slammed a folder onto her desk. "What's this?" she asked, looking annoyed. "Proof that you've been embezzling money from Mom's estate," I said coolly. Her face went pale. "You wouldn't—" "Oh, I would," I said, leaning in close. "Unless you delete that video and make a public apology for the lies you've been spreading. You've meddled in my life for the last time." Karen sputtered, but she knew she was cornered. She took down the video and posted a half-hearted apology that didn't exactly fix things, but it was enough to stop her followers from attacking me. Next, I turned my attention to Mike. I found out he was still trying to land a job at the firm where I had connections. I paid his prospective employer a visit, armed with the photos of him and Candy. "Is this the kind of man you want representing your company?" I asked. Needless to say, Mike's job prospects dried up quickly. As for Candy, I installed security cameras in the house and documented every outburst, every instance of her refusing to leave. When we finally went to court, I handed the footage to the judge. The cherry on top? I discovered she'd been funneling money out of our joint account to fund her nights with Mike. "Your Honor," I said, "I'm not just asking for a divorce. I'm asking for justice." In the end, I got it. The judge ruled in my favor, granting me the house and a hefty settlement to recover what Candy had taken. But the true victory wasn't financial. It was the knowledge that I had stood up for myself and reclaimed my life. I moved out of that house eventually, wanting a fresh start. As for Karen, she's still the same narcissistic manipulator, but she knows better than to mess with me now. Candy and Mike? They lasted about 3 months before their relationship imploded. There are scars, sure. Betrayal doesn't heal overnight. But I've learned that sometimes the only way to deal with injustice is to fight back, with strategy, not just fists. And I'll be damned if I let anyone take advantage of me again. Once the dust settled with the divorce, I thought the storm was over. But Candy's family, her mother, and her 2 meddling sisters had other plans. "You're selfish, Rob," her mother Darlene had hissed during the mediation. "You've ruined my daughter's life. If you were a real man, you'd take her back and work through this." Her sisters were worse, flooding social media with passive-aggressive posts about how some men just can't handle a strong woman. They even started hinting that I had been the one to cheat first, spinning lies to make Candy look like the victim. At first, I ignored it. I figured they'd run out of steam once the divorce was finalized. But when I heard that Darlene had been telling people at church that I had emotionally abused Candy and left her destitute, I knew it was time to act. If they wanted a fight, I was going to give them one. Step 1. Their public image. Candy's family prided themselves on their image in the community. Darlene was on the church council, her sister Deborah chaired local fundraisers, and her youngest sister Sarah ran a mommy blog full of self-righteous parenting advice. They thrived on people's admiration. I hired a private investigator to dig into their finances and activities. It didn't take long to find dirt. Darlene. Turns out she'd been using church funds to cover personal expenses, including trips to a casino 2 towns over. Deborah. Her fundraisers were riddled with accounting discrepancies, with thousands of dollars unaccounted for. Sarah. Her blog was plagiarizing content from other websites, and she'd been using fake testimonials to boost her following. I anonymously mailed packets of evidence to their respective circles, Darlene's pastor, Deborah's charity board, and the admin of a forum Sarah's blog was tied to. The fallout was immediate. Darlene was asked to step down from the church council to focus on personal matters. Deborah was booted from her position and faced an audit. Sarah's blog was flooded with comments calling her out for stealing content, and her sponsors dropped her within days. Step 2. Candy's innocence. Candy's family had painted me as the villain, but they didn't know I still had the ace up my sleeve, the photos and reports from my private investigator. I leaked the evidence to key people in Candy's life, her coworkers, her extended family, even the PTA group chat she loved so much. I didn't have to say anything. The images of her sneaking into hotel rooms with Mike said it all. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. Candy wasn't the victim anymore. She was the cheater, the liar. Her family tried to spin it, but their credibility had already taken a hit. Step 3. Their perfect home. Darlene lived in the house Candy grew up in, a charming old property she loved bragging about. But what most people didn't know was that the house had been purchased years ago using Candy's father's business as collateral. After he passed, the business faltered, and Darlene had barely been keeping up with the payments. When I was married to Candy, I had once co-signed a small loan for the family to keep the house afloat. I'd nearly forgotten about it, until I remembered that my name was still tied to it. I called the bank and asked about the loan. They informed me that Darlene had defaulted on it several times and was barely scraping by. Legally, I had the option to take action, and I did. I filed paperwork to remove my name from the loan and demanded immediate repayment of the balance. Without me as a cosigner, the bank moved to foreclose. Darlene called me, furious. "How could you do this, Rob? This is our family home. And you should have thought about that before lying about me to everyone you know," I replied coldly. Step 4. The final nail. With their reputations shattered and financial troubles piling up, Candy's family finally started to retreat. But I wasn't done. I filed a defamation lawsuit against Darlene and her daughters for the lies they'd spread about me during and after the divorce. I didn't expect to win much money, but that wasn't the point. The legal battle forced them to publicly admit that their claims had no basis. The apology they issued was half-hearted, but it was enough to clear my name. Aftermath. Candy's family went radio silent after that. Darlene lost the house, Deborah moved to another state, and Sarah's blog never recovered. Candy herself was barely scraping by, working 2 jobs to stay afloat after I was awarded most of our assets in the divorce. As for me, I finally felt free. For the first time in years, I wasn't living under the shadow of Candy's deceit or her family's toxicity. Revenge didn't fix everything. I still had wounds that would take time to heal, but it gave me closure, and it sent a clear message. I wasn't someone to be messed with, and you know what? It felt damn good. Months passed, and the storm I'd fought through began to settle. I stood amidst the wreckage of my old life, knowing I'd come out stronger but forever changed. Candy was a ghost in my rearview mirror, her once persistent attempts to rekindle communication extinguished by my unflinching refusal to engage. Her family had scattered, their tightly knit facade unraveling under the weight of their own lies and schemes. But as much as I had won in the practical sense, I still had to rebuild me. Betrayal doesn't just hurt, it leaves scars that make you question your worth, your decisions, and even your instincts. So I started with small steps, reclaiming my space. I sold the house. It was a beautiful home, but its walls whispered too many secrets, too much pain. I used the proceeds to buy a modest cabin on a few acres of land just outside town. It was peaceful, quiet, and entirely mine. I spent my weekends working on the cabin, turning it into something that felt like a fresh start. I built a deck overlooking the woods, a place where I could sit with my coffee in the mornings and feel the weight of the world lift, bit by bit, finding my people. The betrayal had left me wary of relationships, but it also taught me the value of real connections. I reached out to old friends, the ones Candy and her family had pushed out of my life over the years. To my surprise, many welcomed me back with open arms. They'd always suspected something was off about Candy and her crew, but didn't want to interfere. Slowly, I began to rebuild my social circle, surrounding myself with people who genuinely cared. One friend in particular, an old college buddy named Dave, became a lifeline. He'd been through his own share of hardships, and our shared late-night conversations over whiskey and cigars became a kind of therapy. "You've got to stop living in the shadow of what they did to you," Dave told me one night. "You're better than they ever deserved." He was right. Closure with Candy. The last time I saw Candy was at a local grocery store. She looked tired, her once polished appearance dulled by stress and time. "Rob," she said, her voice a mix of hope and hesitation. "Can we talk?" "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, my tone calm but firm. "I've moved on. You should too." She opened her mouth as if to argue but stopped herself. For the first time, I saw genuine regret in her eyes. It didn't make me feel better, but it confirmed what I already knew. I was no longer hers to hurt. A new beginning. About a year after the divorce, I met someone. Her name was Lisa, a graphic designer who had recently moved to town. She was smart, kind, and had a laugh that lit up the room. We met at a charity event organized by a mutual friend. At first, I was hesitant to let my guard down. But Lisa wasn't like Candy. She was genuine, grounded, and had her own story of overcoming betrayal. Our connection was slow but steady, built on trust and mutual respect. She didn't rush me to heal, but she also didn't let me wallow in the past. "You're not defined by what happened to you," she told me once. "You're defined by how you choose to move forward." We started spending more time together, hiking, working on DIY projects at my cabin, and sharing long conversations that stretched into the night. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful. The final justice word eventually got back to me about Candy and Mike. Their affair didn't last, as I'd predicted. Mike had cheated on Candy with someone else, and she had found herself alone and struggling. Her family, once her staunchest defenders, had turned on her when she became more of a liability than an asset. It wasn't my victory, but it was a poetic conclusion to their story. They reaped what they sowed. Looking ahead. One crisp autumn evening, Lisa and I sat on the deck I'd built, watching the sunset. The trees were ablaze with color, and a cool breeze carried the scent of pine. "I think you've finally found peace here," Lisa said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "Maybe," I said, smiling. "But it's not just the place. It's the people who remind me I'm worth more than what I went through." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. I'd lost so much, but in the end, I gained something far greater: clarity, resilience, and a life built on truth instead of lies. The scars remain, but they don't define me. They're just reminders of battles fought and lessons learned. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson, I knew one thing for certain: I was finally free.